There is a question that almost no one asks, honestly. How much do you really need to feel good? Not how much you want, not how much you think you deserve, not how much the people around you earn. How much do you truly need for your life to work? For your mind to be at peace? For each day to have real meaning? Most people never answer that question. They go through their entire lives without asking it. And because they never ask it, they spend decades chasing a number that moves farther away every time they get closer to it. Epicurus was a philosopher in ancient Greece who spent decades observing how human beings create their own suffering. He came to a conclusion that is still uncomfortable today. The problem is not your salary. The problem is your desires. Not your basic desires, but the ones that were planted in you without your permission, the ones you learned to call your own before you realized they belonged to someone else. Today, you are going to understand why most people live chained to a lifestyle they never consciously chose, why that chain becomes heavier the more you earn, and what Epicurus saw that most people still refuse to see. No comforting stories, no promises of abundance, just the naked truth about your desires and what they are costing you. Epicurus said that trying to be happy by constantly consuming is like trying to fill a bucket full of holes. No matter how much you pour into it, it never fills up. To live well with what you earn, you do not need to put more things into the bucket. You need to understand where the holes are and seal them. And to find those holes, Epicurus did something that no philosopher before him had done with such clarity. He organized human desires into 3 categories. Understanding this classification is one of the most unsettling things you can do, because when you apply it to your own life, the result is rarely comfortable. The first category is natural and necessary desires: food, water, shelter, rest, and genuine relationships with people who truly know you. There are only a few of them. They are inexpensive. They are easy to satisfy. And they have one characteristic that all the others lack. Once they are satisfied, they become silent. When you eat because you are hungry, your hunger disappears. It does not come back stronger. It does not demand a more expensive version of itself. It goes away until the next time. And when these desires are fulfilled, 90% of human suffering, hunger, loneliness, insecurity, simply disappears. The second category is natural but unnecessary desires: the expensive restaurant, designer clothes, a better car. Not just eating, but eating at the right place. Not just getting dressed, but wearing something that sends a message to other people. These are pleasant things to have, but they do not increase your real happiness, and they come with an invisible trap. The more you depend on them, the more you have to work to maintain them. The third category is the most dangerous of all: empty desires, status, fame, power, the need to impress. This is the most dangerous category because it has no end. The ego is never satisfied. There is always someone ahead of you, richer, more famous, more admired. The finish line moves with you, and the race never ends. And this is where Epicurus says something painful. You do not own those desires. They own you. To truly live well means focusing your energy on what is necessary. The person who is satisfied with the basics has already removed the greatest obstacle to happiness. And the person who stops chasing emptiness realizes they do not need $1 million to feel on top of the world. They only need to own their time and their peace of mind. A simple person with genuine friends is richer than a billionaire who lives in constant fear of losing everything. Modern society has made all of this infinitely worse. Because today you are not just dealing with natural needs. You live under a constant bombardment of stimuli designed to create desires you never would have had if no one profited from making you feel like something was missing. Every image, every advertisement, every carefully curated feed is built to trigger the same fundamental wound, the feeling that you are missing something. Social media amplifies this exponentially. It does not show you real lives. It shows you edited versions, carefully selected moments, filtered victories, rehearsed smiles. And from that comparison comes a desire that is not even yours. You no longer just want something. You want to become someone who seems to live better than you. And the more you earn, the more sophisticated the trap becomes, because your desires rise along with your income. What once seemed like a luxury becomes the new minimum. And today's minimum will feel insufficient tomorrow. The problem was never the amount. The problem was always the bucket. Epicurus understood something that modern psychology confirmed centuries later. Luxury loses its appeal once it becomes routine. If you eat at an expensive restaurant every week, the gourmet food and beautiful atmosphere stop feeling special. They simply become normal. Psychology has a name for this: hedonic adaptation. And we quickly get used to what we have. What once brought pleasure becomes an obligation. Epicurus lived simply in a small community he called the Garden, a close group of friends who lived, ate, and talked together. Every now and then, he would ask a friend for a piece of cheese, not because he needed it, but because he wanted to truly experience it. This is what we might call the principle of the cheese. Keep your daily routine simple so that life's small pleasures still feel genuinely special. Most people fall into the comfort trap. When their income goes up, the world convinces them that they have to upgrade. Specialty coffee every day, a more expensive gym, a new car. At first it feels enjoyable, but soon it becomes the new standard. and you end up spending more just to feel the same level of satisfaction you used to feel before. Epicurus' entire philosophy was about escaping this comfort trap, because he knew that the more needs you create for yourself, the more you become a slave to your paycheck. Keeping your routine simple is actually a way of protecting your ability to feel joy. Think of it this way. If you eat an expensive meal every Sunday, eventually it becomes just Sunday lunch. It loses its magic. But if you eat simply for most of the month, that special meal or that good bottle of wine takes on a completely different meaning. It becomes a real occasion. With an average income, you may not be able to indulge every day. But if your routine is simple and intentional, a small treat stops being just another purchase. It becomes a feast. So do not keep upgrading your routine. Live simply most of the time so that when you choose to treat yourself, it truly means something. As Epicurus said, the less a person needs wealth, the more they enjoy it. Many philosophers of Epicurus' time, such as Aristotle, saw happiness as a kind of flourishing, a lifelong process of developing virtue and fulfilling your potential. Epicurus saw it differently. To him, happiness was not a mountain to climb. It was the absence of the things that make us suffer. And he summed it up with two pillars. The first is aponia, the absence of physical pain, a body that functions well without being pushed to its limits. The second is ataraxia, the absence of mental anxiety, a peaceful mind, free from the constant noise of comparison and the need to impress. For Epicurus, if you are not in pain and your mind is at peace, then you have already achieved what is essential to human life. You do not need anything more to live well. These two states are the foundation. Everything else is decoration. Look around you. The people we treat like gods today, the extremely successful celebrities, millionaire influencers, often live under extraordinary levels of stress. They may have private jets and mansions, but they also have impossible schedules, enormous responsibilities, and the constant fear of losing everything. They have wealth, but they do not have peace. Their bodies are pushed to the limit, destroying aponia. Their minds never rest, destroying ataraxia. In trying to gain everything, they end up losing the very thing that makes life worth living. And the most interesting part is that you do not need great wealth to achieve these two things. In many cases, an average income, used wisely, is already enough. Aponia comes from getting the basics right. Eating well, sleeping well, moving your body without pushing it beyond its limits. You do not need an expensive gym or a personal chef to do that. You simply need to avoid extremes. Both overworking yourself and endless indulgence quietly wear you down. Ataraxia, on the other hand, is what emerges when you begin to cut through the noise of life. It is the state that appears when you stop comparing your life to other people's lives and stop trying to impress people who do not even truly know you. When you let go of those unnecessary desires, your spending becomes more stable, and so does your mind. Think about the trade-off. If you have a simple job that pays your bills and your evenings and weekends genuinely belong to you, to read, spend time with the people you love, or simply do nothing at all, then you are already living a kind of luxury. You own your time, and that is something many wealthy people do not have. Very often, they are trapped by the demands of their own success. There is also a quiet and deeply underrated advantage to earning an average income. Your risks are naturally lower. That gives you the freedom to walk away from the things that disturb your peace because you are not tied to a grand image or an expensive lifestyle that requires constant spending to maintain. When you are not at the top of the pyramid, you are not a target. You do not have to lose sleep worrying about losing an empire, managing enormous risks, or being judged by millions of strangers. And in the Epicurean sense, that is exactly what it means to live well. It is not about having more, it is about being more at peace. The person who owns their time, their health, and their peace of mind is not living an average life. They are living a full life with an average income. But there was something Epicurus valued above everything else, something he considered the foundation of a happy life: genuine human relationships. For him, of everything that contributes to a happy life, friendship was the most important. And he did not just talk about it. He bought a house with a garden and invited his friends to live, eat, and spend time talking together. That was radical for the time. The garden was open to everyone, men, women, and enslaved people. It was a place defined by the richness of relationships, not by material status. They spent their days debating, writing, and exchanging ideas about the things that usually frighten people: the fear of death, anxiety about the future. And they practiced what Epicurus called laethbiosis, living unnoticed. While everyone else in Athens exhausted themselves trying to become famous or gain political power, the people in the garden were busy doing something much harder: staying away from drama. They understood that you do not need the applause of the whole world if you have a handful of people who truly know you. A meaningful life is not measured by how many people know your name. It is measured by the quality of the conversations you have with the people beside you. Social wealth is worth far more than material wealth. You may not have a luxury home or a private movie theater, but if you have 4 or 5 close friends who are happy to chip in for dinner and a movie night at home, you are already living a large part of what truly matters. for a fraction of the cost. The feeling of living like a god does not come from an expensive purchase. It comes from laughter, from connection, from the feeling of belonging to something. And here is something money cannot buy. When you have a high income or a prestigious position, you often end up surrounded by people who are there because of what you can offer. With an average income, you know your friends are there because they like you, not because of your title or your bank account. That kind of emotional security is something many extremely wealthy people never experience. Deep down, we do not buy things because we need them. We buy them to fill a void. A bigger screen to escape boredom, a flashier car to feel noticed. But Epicurus understood that many of those desires are actually substitutes for human connection, because when you have that connection, you no longer need to prove your worth through what you own. You do not need distractions or validation from strangers. You already feel like you are enough. So instead of trying to impress the world, invest in the people around you. Use your income, no matter how much it is, to create moments. Share a meal. Call a friend for coffee. Spend time with the people who truly know you, because that kind of wealth will never appear in your bank account, but it quietly makes your life feel full every single day. And now we come to the hardest part of all. The biggest obstacle to truly feeling at peace is not a lack of money. It is the fear of one day having none. We spend our entire lives in jobs we do not like, buying things we do not need simply because we are terrified of what would happen if our paycheck stopped coming. But Epicurus had a radical solution to that. Practice simplicity. From time to time, he suggested living with the absolute minimum for a few days. Eat the simplest food, drink only water, wear the most basic clothes you own, not as a punishment, but as training. Afterward, you realize it is not nearly as difficult as you imagined. You discover that even if you lost everything you have today, you would still be okay. You would still have your health, your peace of mind, and your friends. When you stop fearing poverty, you stop being a slave to your boss or to the economy, because you know exactly how little you need to be music happy. As Epicurus said, nothing is enough for the person for whom enough is never enough. By mastering your desires and facing the worst-case scenario head-on, you are not just surviving. You are taking back control of your own life. The problem was never your salary. The problem was that you were taught to need too much and never taught to figure out how much was enough. And once you see that clearly, the world can no longer buy you with the promise that just a little more will solve what the last little more never did, because you finally realize that the destination you were chasing out there has been much closer all along than you ever believed. If you made it this far, write in the comments how much you truly think you need to live in peace, not the number the world told you, your number. And if this kind of reflection makes you see life differently, the next video is already on your screen. Click it, if you have the courage to keep going.